My title is Important Global Cues to Continue Dirty Energy Financing, and I'll justify why I'm saying this, because we have heard a lot how the global energy financing is shifting from fossil fuels to renewable. So very encouraging stories. I'd like to show the figures and the picture, and also I'll cover that second part very briefly, financing non-energy projects to continue fossil fuel financing, where basically means you don't finance energy to finance energy. That might look a little confusing, but I'll explain. I'll not go back to actually this kind of global queue started in 2012. If you remember, the Rio Plus 20 summit, Earth Summit, which is the second big Earth Summit, actually the third one after South Africa. So there, the AC for all, if you remember, the sustainable energy for all, that came in as global energy direction, the directive that energy should grow globally. I'll not go back to that because that will lengthen the presentation. I'll go a little bit, 7 years from Paris Agreement. That's current memory goes to mostly to Paris Agreement, and it's trumpeted as a big triumph. Two cues that are very important from the Paris Agreement, two key, which, of course, the good point is all the 197 parties, that is the country governments who are party to the UNFCCC convention, they agreed on doing something. But what that something is very important to understand. The first cue is every country or every party who submitted plans, including India, submitted net zero plan, not a zero emission plan. So that needs to be understood. That means that you will keep on emitting carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and all other greenhouse gases, but somehow we'll also sequester or absorb them or do something with that. Put it underground, put it in the seabed, try to convert that into rocks and all kinds of things. So that's a very important global cue that you don't really need to completely shift away from fossil fuels. Continue to finance fossil fuel projects, but do something also along with that. The second important global cue was, see, the carbon markets were there even earlier. The carbon markets originated in the Kyoto Protocol. If you remember, the US pressurized all other countries to adopt this flexible mechanism where the carbon market mechanism, carbon ka bazaar se chalega, so that mechanism was under US pressure. It was in Kyoto. But this was first institutionalized in an international climate agreement in the Paris Agreement. And this also has a lot of implications. This is the ETS, that is the emission trading scheme, the CDM, clean development mechanism. And this also means as long as some carbon credit, whatever be its credibility or its real value, wherever there is some in the market, some carbon credit available, and we have done studies on at least 20 projects, we know what kind of credible projects they are, you can keep on emitting so that the carbon credit can be used to neutralize this. What happened after Paris? Immediately after Paris, that's why I'm saying these are global cues. 60 largest banks and financial institutions in the next 5 years. If you remember, Paris Agreement was signed on 12th of December 2015. From 2016, only the 60 largest banks, they invested $3.8 trillion into fossil fuel infrastructure. And if you take other large banks and financial instruments, it goes well over $5 trillion. So this was clearly in response to the Paris cue that you don't really need to go to zero, we'll do net zero. So this is very important cue which global industry and financial institutions have acted on. They are not saying, oh, we are shifting away, they have acted on it. And this is from a report from Banking on Climate Chaos. Many of you might have seen this. What happened in India, you know, this 2021 UNEP production gap report, if you have read this, that government subsidies on fossil fuels have kept on going. Sometime it increased, sometime it decreased, but fossil fuel subsidies, the figures are there, a lot of other figures are there, kept on going. What happened globally, you see what happened in India. And if you look at the subsidies picture, most of the subsidies has gone, one, oil and gas, second, transmission distribution network. Now transmission distribution, you can argue that this is also for renewable, but given that renewables actually has not gone into all areas of the country, it is still limited to some states. So the most of the, and from other data we know that most of the transmission distribution investment has gone to basically evacuate power from ultra mega power plants and large coal power plants. Sorry, I came back. The second global queue I'll talk about is last year, the COP26 or Conference of Parties number 26 in Glasgow. This was again the Glasgow Climate Pact was again hyped quite a lot. At the end I said Glasgow had some good points, but what are the major cues that this major climate summit sent to us? One was, see, out of lot of proposal, there was a proposal by some developed countries to include in the text, official text, because whatever people discuss, whatever newspaper publish have absolutely no value in what happens. What countries will have to do is included in two documents. One, what is the official text that they have agreed to? Second, what is there in their NDC, the National Determined Contribution. So these two documents guide the governments. Of course, sometimes they don't even follow that, but these are the two guiding documents. Others, if you find a lot of very encouraging newspaper headlines, those really do not matter. So which matter is this. So the phase out of coal. Coal, you know, still is, coal and oil contribute roughly equally to greenhouse gas emission, global warming. And we have to also remember repeatedly that we are talking about transition, not only transition, a just transition, all this in the context of a serious threat to the global climate system. Not just for another, it is good so we are transitioning. We have to. So even in the morning, Ajayji also pointed that out very clearly. So the one cue was that phase out of coal, India and China opposed very strongly and justifiably so, I believe, because US and EU were pointing out to coal only, not to oil and gas. But as a result, the entire thing got dropped. What was included, what was included is phase down of coal. Now down can mean anything. If I am emitting 100 gigatons, supposing 110 gigatons, if I go to 9.7 gigatons, it is phasing down. That do not help the climate in any way. I'll show what happened as a result. So this phase down also had global consequences, because these are global indications that you can do this to industry, to governments, to financial institutions. This is what you can do. This is what is permitted. This is what our governments will do. If you again look at it, coal, oil, gas kept on getting huge amount of subsidies. This is World Energy Investment 22, International Energy Agency report. This is the latest report. So what happened as a result of those investments? India also didn't respond badly to this. I'm saying quote unquote badly. Don't take the badly as right away word. This year, India's finance minister, not the coal minister, finance minister was the person who announced this. They announced the till now biggest new coal mine auction, opening up 141 new coal mines in one go. Already India's coal production has been increased over the last few years, but 141 new coal mines, and with coal mining being made commercially available, not linked to power production or steel production, this coal production is going up. So this is the kind of responses governments throughout the world and Indian government is giving to the global cues. So now you don't have to phase out coal, you phase down, but how does that help in even phasing down? I have to yet to understand. So that probably needs a little bit more study of government minds, what Ajay might be able to do much better than me. Then this year, I just came back few days ago means I was there, but I took a few more days in Egypt. Again, I was in Glasgow also, and to mention also, while before coming to Glasgow, this is also important, what people say, what comes out in the newspaper, what global leaders, Biden, at that time Johnson, Mr. Modi, all of them say and what they do, what actually happens, sometimes might be very, very different. Just before coming to Glasgow, Boris Johnson, who was hosting that summit, actually was pushing for opening up a huge new oil field, Cambo. Biden made the OPEC, the Organization for Petroleum Exporting Countries, and actually hard negotiated that OPEC should increase oil production so that American SUV drivers can maintain their lifestyles. But he came to Glasgow and gave a lot of other statements. When some of us challenged the US delegation, not Biden, they just avoided answering to us. Anyway, these are the kind of things that happen. So what happens in COP27 this year, which ended on 20th morning, it was scheduled to end on 18th, as usual for the last several years, it's extended. So again there were cues. Very surprisingly or not so surprisingly, I would say extremely smart move by India. India proposed, and many other countries, including the most powerful bloc there, powerful means in numbers, G77 plus China, plus the IOCs, the island nations, the island nations bloc, etc. They supported India's proposal. The text that was suggested was phase out all fossil fuels. Why did India do that? India refused to phase out even coal. But India proposed phase out all fossil fuels. It should become very clear because India wanted to relieve, India, China and all, wanted to relieve the targeted pressure on developing countries who are more reliant on coal. So it was a card game. People play games in this negotiation. These are global political negotiations. These are not little bit of tug and like here and there. So India's proposal obviously was strongly resisted by EU, by US, by Australia, by all developing countries. So as a result, the present text, the latest text, do not have any mention of phasing out all fossil fuel, not even phasing out of coal, because that was a negotiating part. The text they included is phasing out of a very clever introduction. If you don't look closely, you will not even find. Phasing out unabated coal. So what is this word unabated coal? How can you do abatement of coal? This means, abatement means you burn coal, you burn everything, oil, gas, keep burning. But the carbon dioxide that it releases, you do something which soaks it back, which is sequestration. So as long as you can sequester it back, you are free to continue to burn coal, oil and gas. That's the global cue coming out from the climate conference, which has been earlier billed as the implementation COP. We are supposed to implement. So the second cue, the third cue is that in this, just the day when the COP opened on November 6th afternoon, the COP officially opened, from 7 the business started, business end. So on the 6th evening, the advisory body on Article 6 of Paris Agreement, Article 6 deals with Article 6.2, 6.4. Like every international agreement, there are a lot of articles, like in our constitution also. So Article 6.2 and 6.4 deals with the market mechanism for mitigation. So as I said, if you have some kind of credit somewhere, you can keep burning, keep emitting. So buy that credit, like we talked about REC and PAT and all these things are there. So you can compensate for that, which is offsetting. You emit, offset that by a credit. So COP to advisory committee on Article 6, they came out with an approval for ocean carbon removal, that is ocean CDR, ocean carbon dioxide removal, as an approved mechanism for carbon market under Paris Agreement. That means you do large-scale geoengineering experiment in the oceans. Forget about what happened to the fish workers or everything. You do experiment. As long as some additional phytoplankton boom occurs, there are 3 methods of, I will not go into details of ocean CDR and how geoengineering is done. It's another subject. So as long as you do some large geoengineering and show that it is actually absorbing some carbon dioxide, it's another matter. The till date largest experiment done jointly by India and Germany, Helmholtz Institute in Germany and National Institute of Oceanography in Goa, that was in 2009 January. it only had 12 to 14% of additional carbon sequestration. The target was 30 to 50%. And the global scientific community deemed it to be a failure. Out of 17 experiments, only one has been little bit successful, 16 failed. In spite of that, the advisory committee approved this as a carbon market mechanism under Paris Agreement. And in the side note that I wrote, that COP27 had over 630 recorded fossil fuel lobbyists taking active part with huge resources, talking continuously with parties. Parties are representatives of the country governments. When we go as observers, except here when I was part of an advisory board of UN, one UN agency, we go as observers. So this was a side note. And the last one that I mentioned quickly is that how do you really don't fund energy projects to fund fossil fuel projects? As I said, you have abatements. So if you have abatements, carbon capture projects, you can do some soaking up, taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, react with some oxide mineral, convert it to calcium carbonate or magnesium carbonate and store it as stone. You can take it out, filter it, pump it in an abandoned mine. Whether it will remain there, nobody knows. You can pump it. These are the proposals, actual proposals which have come and which are being experimented on. There are something like 83 plus such projects which are already on. I'll show the figures. There are more than that. So I'll go quickly. I think time is running out. So companies, this you can see, in the past 12 months, this has exploded. How come all these years it was not only few projects like Ajayji also said, the famous Future Gen project in US for the past big carbon sequestration was abandoned. US, all of them were together and it failed. But suddenly there is an explosion. These are coming from the cues from the global climate negotiations. Once you open the floodgates, this will come. There is an explosion of carbon capture projects in the last 1 year, last 12 months. It grew by 44% in 1 year. And now there are more than 196, including in the pipeline. So this is a quick glimpse. I'm not saying this. Activists are not saying this. This is Mr. Antonio Guterres saying. You can see this. The reliance on fossil fuels is pushing the world to the brink. November 21. Fossil fuel farms have humanity by the throat. June 22. We all heard that how great renewables are progressing. But this is even Secretary General talking in this year also. World has gambled on fossil fuels and lost. June 22. And this very recently, global addiction to fossil fuels must end. That means we are still very much addicted to fossil fuels. I'll request all of you that let us take a broad picture. Let us take a macro view. Because one thing we can look at small things and a lot of people can speak a lot of different texts and all of them might be true. But the atmosphere don't lie. The seas don't lie. The oceans don't lie. And every year the carbon dioxide percentage in the atmosphere kept on increasing from 2 to 2.5 ppm every year for the last 15-20 years. And this year October's average reached over 419. Many scientists believe 350 is the safe limit. So we are much way above that scientific consensus. So that's one thing that I say, atmosphere don't lie. Nature don't lie. Looking at individual sectors, you might find bright sparks here and there. That's all good. But we also have to see what is happening at a larger scale. And the situation that we are in, we cannot be satisfied by focusing our energies and our attention just to one small part somewhere. Because we are, again, I'm saying again, we are not just talking about transforming our transport to electricity. That's important. That is part of the solution. But we'll have to see that that carbon dioxide that has gone in, whether you produce or whether you finance 500 gigawatt of renewable power or 800 gigawatt or 5,000 gigawatt, the atmosphere and the earth system do not care. It has absolutely no impact. What has impact is how much is the greenhouse gas concentration in the atmosphere at the end of the year. Because that's what determines how much warming how much destabilization of the earth system will happen. So even today, out of the 165,000 terawatt hour of primary energy, I'm not talking about just electricity. In India, electricity constitutes just around 17% of total primary energy. Globally, it is a little more, some 20-25%. Out of 165,000 terawatt hours today, it was an N21, 143,000 or roughly 86% still comes from carbon-based fuel, 86% today. In India, renewable energy gives only 4% of our total primary energy, not 10%. That's of electricity, 4%. Globally, it is much less than 10%. So we have a very, very long way to go, and we have to go that way very, very fast without getting distracted by this small elephant tail is wagging a little bit good. So I think I have hinted at what needs to be done, and thank you for listening carefully.